I can't keep running away from it. It's time for me to finally come back to talk about Amphibia. But before I begin, I need to tell you a story, because unless you've been watching me for ages, you probably don't know my history with this show. In 2021, I came to the realization that I am bisexual. This obviously led to me exploring queer spaces online, and that Pride Month I learned about a little show with a bisexual lead called The Owl House. I immediately fell in love with the show and needed more, so I decided to watch that Gravity Falls show I had always heard about, but had never gotten around to watching, since Owl House fans seem to love it too, and what a surprise, I did end up loving it. Another show I kept hearing people talk about was some random show about frogs, and for the third time in a row, I loved it. And when season 3 began, I just loved it even more. I always saw people being upset with the first half of season 3, and that made me really angry, because I was just loving every second of it, and Froggy Little Christmas easily became my favorite episode of the show. When it was announced that the Owl House season 2B and Amphibia season 3B would be airing side by side, I was ecstatic. The day came, I watched Follies at the Coven Day Parade, I absolutely loved it. I watched Escape to Amphibia, and I thought it was just as good as Froggy Little Christmas. It got me so hyped for what was to come next. Fast forward a week, Elsewhere Elsewhen was peak, and then Commander Ann and Spryvy were kind of mid. Okay, surely this is just a little stumble. The show's been good so far. There's no way Amphibia would fall off right at the end, right? Yeah, I did not like Amphibia Season 3B. I thought it was filled with character degradation, a complete 180 on the show's themes, and I despised The Hardest Thing with a passion. But my old opinions do not matter. I reviewed the whole show back when it ended, but those old videos kinda sucked, so now I will be going back to the show, and I'm going in with a completely open mind. I don't like to hate things, and even if I do still end up hating the ending, I will put some actual effort to properly explain my thoughts instead of just going on an angry rant. So without further ado, let's see if I was wrong about Amphibia. Season 1 is incredible. Rewatching these episodes all these years later made me just so damn happy. I love this season so much. I've thought this for years, but to me, the best part of Amphibia is the comedy. It's genuinely one of the funniest cartoons I've ever watched, and that's due to a variety of factors. Of course, the actual writing is a big one, but both the animation and the incredible voice cast elevated to peak comedy. I'm constantly quoting this show's jokes, down to the very specific way the actors deliver their lines. And, well, trying to do their faces, but that's kind of impossible. But being a boring real person instead of a cartoon doesn't stop me from quoting, "I don't want to live on this planet anymore. Have you killed a man, Hop Pop? I don't feel safe," and many more daily. But the quality of the writing, voice acting, animation goes far beyond the comedy. Something that really gets me mad is when people treat this season as the filler season, when to me it's easily the best season of the 3. Anne's character arc over the course of these episodes is fantastic. I love the way Anne or Beast establishes her compassionate nature from the beginning, and then Bess Franz shows us the way Sasha's manipulation has affected her, long before we would explicitly see that. It works great both as setup for Anne and Sasha's relationship, and as a way to build Anne and Sprig's relationship. Sasha's bad behavior led to Anne having a toxic view on friendship, where she believed she needed to do everything Sasha wanted. But with Sprig, now she has a friend who shows genuine joy from spending time with her, rather than simply using her as a way to get what he wants. Sprig himself is also an awesome character. I really love his lively, fun-going personality, as well as his insane dedication to Anne. Polly is mostly there just for the comedy this season, but she fulfills that role very well. Hop-Up is probably the funniest character in the show though. The first half of season 1 has almost perfect pacing. On the surface level, these episodes seem to be mostly basic, episodic, unconnected stories, but when you take them as a full package, they are all needed to truly appreciate this story. We see Anne's growth from being an immature person who doesn't want to put in the work to actually achieve her goals, and someone who focuses too much on changing who she is to get people to like her, to someone who takes full responsibility for her mistakes when nobody would have had any way of finding out, and becoming Wardwood's Frog of the Year simply for being her true self. Even the episodes that don't seem deep at first, like Cane Crazy, Anne Theft Auto, Breakout Star, and Anne vs. Wild, end up being vital to Anne's arc. Simple slice of life stories like these are great at showing a character's growth as a person, and it's not just Anne on her own. We see how the Planters, and eventually the rest of Wardwood, all grow attached to her. Episodes like Hot Pluck and Lily Pad Thai are great examples of episodes where other characters help Anne grow, but she helps them to grow. Getting to see the positive impact she has on this community, like revamping Stumpy's, and also just her general interactions with the town, are what make Toe Tax and eventually Anne of the Year so satisfying. The townsfolk of Wardwood are very fun. Wally is really funny, and Wally and Anne is a great episode that's another example of how the townspeople help Anne grow, with Wally helping Anne to not be bothered by others looking down on her. Ivy doesn't really do much, but her and Sprig are genuinely adorable. Like, really adorable. The wonderful vibe of these episodes can also be greatly felt in the show's theme song and credits, which probably sounds weird since these both give off pretty different vibes, but both perfectly capture a different part of the show. The theme song represents the more fun and adventurous side of the show, with the credits representing the nice, sweet character focus. TJ Hill is just so good. His music throughout this entire show is incredible. Anne's theme is genuinely one of my favorite character themes ever. Unfortunately, the second half of the season is slightly weaker, but I do mean slightly. And that's mainly because of the Big Bug Bowl game and Children of the Spore. The Big Bug Bowl game would have been a perfectly fine episode if it was placed earlier on, but Anne is just way too self-centered here when she's meant to have grown out of this kind of mindset for a while now. As for Children of the Spore, now Anne, as well as Sprig, Polly, and Hop Pop all feel out of character. Anne, Polly, and Sprig have never really acted out like this. And really, Hop Pop, you're just gonna spread some unknown substance you got from a really suspicious guy on your kids? Did you forget that products that sound too good to be true usually aren't true at all? I don't hate or even really dislike these episodes. Like, how could anyone hate the Big Bubble game? It has Chuck!
I grow tulips.
They're just a bit eh. Fiddle Me This is another episode I think falls a little bit flat, but in this case I do really like the concept. I just think there needed to be actual consequences for the way Hop Pop pushed Sprig so hard. That big bat swooping down and nearly eating Sprig wasn't really Hop Pop's fault. If it was anyone's fault, it was Anne, who made the costume that attracted it to Sprig. So the message doesn't really work. And as a result, the episode feels like a weaker version of Sadie's song from Steven Universe. Other than those small gripes, the rest of the season is still really great. I like that the first half is mostly dedicated to the characters, in particular the main four, while the second half is a lot more about delving into the rest of the citizens of Wardwood and world building. We got our first reference to Newtopia in Fiddle Me This, and Bizarre Bazaar gives us our first hints towards the mystery behind the music box. The world building this season is also less about the physical world and more about how this world's society functions. Season 1 does a great job at showing the class system of Amphibia. We mostly see the working class frogs and the toads who serve as a military force, but the newt's position as the rich upper class is also touched upon. Albus Stockweed is clearly someone who looks down upon poor institutions, and he holds a lot of influence in the world of restaurants. Trentonio doesn't really fit with the rest of the newts in the show, and the same goes for Valerina, but Newtopia's brief mention does establish a clear link between newts and higher education, so that upper class aspect to Amphibia is very present. Yeah, I'm literally just Marty when it comes to Anne and the Planters. I love the found family trope. Just like how Anne grows as an individual over each event of the season, the evolution of her familial bond with Sprig, Hop-Hop, and Polly is paced really well, with early episodes establishing the dynamics between them, and then showing a gradual build-up of trust between them, leading to them being more open to each other, like Hop-Hop emotionally opening up about missing Charlie Big Bottom, and more importantly, Anne being more open about her not being able to handle the extreme camping. And it's only after this and the planters showing compassion towards her that she's built up enough trust with them to finally show them the Calamity Box. But there's still two very important episodes I've yet to mention: Prison Break and Reunion. I hate Sasha. She gets me really mad, but that's kind of the point. I do think she's a brilliantly written character. I talked about how the show has shown the way Sasha has impacted on Anne's character, but none of that would really be clear without actually seeing her manipulation at work, pretending to be nice to the Toads to get them to leave, and showing her lack of care for Anne and Marcy by deciding to side with the ruthless Captain Grime instead of actually trying to help them, or how she shows no regard for Marcy when Anne asks if she's seen her. That end of discussion bit is definitely the most explicit example of manipulation. I like that she's written to not be subtle about it at all. She claims to want to give Anne an amazing birthday, while completely shutting down Anne's own wants and desires. She allows the planters to travel with her and Anne, but that little pause before her allowing it makes it clear she's only doing this to stay on Anne's good side. She waits for the planters to leave before attempting to villainize them in Anne's eyes, but she does it in a way that makes it pass off as just a bit of fun banter, so Anne isn't immediately turned off. Reunion is so good. Anne's main character arc this season was mostly over by toe tax, but it's not fully realized until she is finally able to stand up to the person who had been holding her back. She now has built up a real friendship with not only the planters, but the whole town of Wartwood, and having that real connection is what allows her to win. I love this episode so much, and then Lean on Me starts playing. Back when I first watched this in 2021, I immediately burst out laughing, and the same has happened on every single rewatch. Like, you can't play a licensed song with lyrics over the top of important dialogue. This scene could have been amazing. I've talked about how awfully Sasha has treated Anne, but I still really feel for Anne. She still wants a friendship with her. Plus, Anne is actually a good person who doesn't want her to die. And this shot is genuinely beautiful, but it's all ruined by that fuck-ass song. Why couldn't TJ Hill have just made the music for this? If you replace Lean on Me with something by him, this scene would have been like a billion times better. But despite that, Amphibia Season 1 is still so fucking good. I have a few little issues with it, but even though my biggest issue was with the finale, when I finished it, I was smiling like a dummy. Who cares that there's a few episodes where the main cast act out of character, or that there's a horribly placed licensed song in what should be the emotional climax of the season? That doesn't take away from Anne's beautifully paced arc, the wholesome as fuck found family storyline, or the hysterical comedy. Amphibia Season 1 is brilliant, and it's also the best season of the three.